For episode 93 of the Construction Dorkcast, we bring back in an old friend, Aaron Krovance. Or is it Jonathan? We may never know. Aaron or John sat down with us to talk about his time on the GC side of the table, where he worked to bring his experience in prefab to their processes. Aaron is also a serial hobbyist, so of course we get a little sidetracked here and there. Are we sure it's not John? Either way, we hope you enjoy, and just a teaser, the Dorks may shake things up in the new year and possibly also move to a value for value model. If you know, you know.
We're live, episode 93, Return of the MEP. That's right, we've got Aaron Krovance, or as I like to call him, the drone extraordinaire. Aaron,
Hey,
it's awesome to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a while. I can't believe how much older I've gotten in the short amount of time.
Well, age, it's a digital thing, it happens. It happens.
And we're not joined by John today, so we can keep all the viewers guessing if Aaron and John really are the same person.
That's right.
So if you've ever known or have never seen the two of them in the same place, are they really different?
That's right.
I don't know. Actually,
have you ever? It's like Superman and Clark Kent. Have you ever seen the two of them side by side?
I've never seen them side by side.
No,
it doesn't happen.
It rarely does. So listen, you guys know how this goes. It is a wonderful recording night. I'm gonna break the fourth wall and talk about the fact that this is pre-MEP innovation. It'll probably be released during MEP innovation. So I'm excited to say that, well, let's just say technology doesn't always agree with all of us. So I'm starting with a Rancor Old Fashioned, which is a barrel aged. It's a bourbon, but then it's aged for a while in a, Travis, you and I have talked about this before. It's a port. So it's in the casket that a port was in. Mm-hmm. So it brings some of that flavor over into it. So that's mine today. Travis, what do you got, man?
Tonight I went with a beer. I've got a Founder's Porter, one of Trent's favorites. I'm sure it's got roasted coffee notes and graham cracker sweetness.
It does sound good.
It's very good. It's very good. How about you, Trent?
Well, I mean, it's dry January for me, but I decided to at least step it up and not be quite as boring. So I went with a San Pellegrino sparkling water. So can sit here and sip it, and it kind of looks like I'm just drinking champagne right out of the bottle. So
sparkling your still, sir. I don't know. Sparkling your still.
Don't
see. That's the thing, my friend. You got to put that in a glass with the lime, and nobody knows.
Yeah, I'm not exactly what you would call the classiest individual. So it probably would be okay for me to just drink it right out of the bottle anyway.
And Aaron, as the guest, what have you brought with us tonight? And while you're introducing it, introduce yourself a little bit to those who might not know you.
Well, yeah, no, this is a perfect one. So I don't know if you guys know who this is. Russ's IGA. You probably remember the grocery stores from way back in the day, right? IGAs. Yeah.
International Growers Association.
There you go. So Russ's is the grocery store that I won my national championship grocery sacking with.
I forgot about that.
They got with a local zip line. I'm sure you guys have heard of them before. A local brewery here in Nebraska, and produced their own line of beer. So IGA stands for Independent Golden Ale. So it's just a simple little ale beverage going on tonight. But I thought since we are talking, it was only appropriate to use it as an icebreaker for myself a little bit too.
Wow,
I completely forgot about that. So to remind us and the guests, you were a national champion grocery.
Yeah, I'll have to back that off a little bit. I placed 5th. I was sick as a dog, and it was Vegas, and I was 18.
Here come
the
excuses.
Yeah. But no, so I was a state champion grocery sacking competition. Yep. No, it's good times. kind of like Jonathan has said, and I've kind of adopted it, is I've found out that my hobbies are hobbies. So, yeah, well, I found myself today. I was actually in the garage. It's what, 20 degrees outside, and I was trying to tune up some of my woodworking tools, and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, dang, it's cold. So I went over to the hardware store and got a space heater and mounted it up to the ceiling, and I'm like, oh yeah, now I can actually do some woodworking. So yeah.
Nice.
He is,
and
really
that's I
is
think
John.
that's part of where the ADD kicks in, right? Is it's like, oh, I could do the woodworking, but I got to have a space heater. And then once you do that, once you get the space heater, it's like, oh, well, now I got to go pick up the kids. And so it always just some sort of variant, but you just try to keep it all together, right?
So you have a house full of half-finished projects.
Yeah, I won't show you the ceiling in the basement here. It's got a patch that I've been meaning to patch for 12 years now. So, but no one looks up, right? I mean,
That's right.
everyone I know is introverts, so we're all looking at each other's shoes.
Well, I always said too, if somebody points that out, they can get out of my house. I don't
Right.
need that. I don't need you here.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, I've got the next 2 weeks off, and so the father-in-law actually called me up yesterday. He's like, "Hey, you want to work on redoing that front hallway in your house?" And I was like, yeah, maybe, maybe.
No.
Yeah, I would love to scrape off 50-year-old wallpaper that the glue is worse than anything you can imagine. Yeah, absolutely no. No.
So for those that
He's
don't know you, what other projects do you, I mean, by the way, I think right now the hole in your ceiling is no longer a hole, it's a feature. It's so that you can
Yes.
see where things run. That's the
Yep.
difference, is over time it becomes a feature. I mean, this is where the joke is about you and Jonathan. You have so many hobbies, but they actually drive like a lot of the innovation and things that you do. So,
Oh, absolutely. So the one that I think, and you mentioned it earlier, Jeff, is the drone stuff, right? So I just about a month and a half ago, I got roped in, as so many of the amazing stories go. I got roped into helping a local high school basketball team, boys basketball team, make a hype video for their basketball season. And I sat there, as I'm doing this production, I'm like, how did I get roped into this? Like, so the long story short of it is, a friend of mine flies drones for MCL, and they asked him, because we just recently completed a project with the school system, and they asked him to fly the drone inside. Well, he's got like a big matrice, and they want this like cinematic FPV by the players, and he's like, I can't do that. And I'm like, yeah, no, you'll kill each and every one of them trying to do it. So I'm like, but I do have this little DJI Neo that I just picked up for like $300, and yeah, we can give it a whirl. So I went over one night after basketball practice, and I have some footage of this practice that now all of a sudden I'm choreographing. I'm like, okay, hey, number 3, you're gonna do a layup as the drone passes by, and number 12, you're gonna sit here and dribble like somehow impressive, like make it look good. I don't care. And then, there's this, so that was like half the practice. And then I spun around and was going to go through one player's legs, like he just rebounded and they're doing a fast break down the court. So I ended up, I'm telling this kid, I'm like, okay, keep your legs spread way far apart. Like this thing's, it's only the size of my palm, so it's not huge. But I'm like, I don't think it's going to act funny or squirrely on me, but I was like, this is relatively new, so I want you to keep your legs, stationary. I'm going to fly through. Don't move. You'll be fine. And so we end up doing that, and, weave the drone through the fast break, and I get it up high. behind the hoop, right, is their star players dunking, and then it just kind of swoops down, and they've all regrouped at this point and are running to the main gym from the practice, and it turned out really cool. But it's it's sitting there, I'm like, this is so bizarre. Like, why am I here doing this? But it's kind of fun.
Well, speaking of how you got to where you are, any of our viewers that remember you you were in the mechanical world when we all first met you, and then you took a hiatus. You want to talk about what you were trying to do there, or what you've been trying to
Yeah.
work on?
Yeah. So I had that 4 month sabbatical into the GC world, which amazing experience. I loved the opportunities that were there. Some of the cool things that we really got to focus on was helping coach internally what we would consider in the mechanical world self-performed prefab. So, on the GC side, we sat back and I'm like, hey guys, we can cut all the backing and blocking for you guys. So, your studs are 16 inches on center. We'll cut this piece of wood 15 and 5/8, run 2 dados down the side of it so they can insert into any stud any way you like. And, we'll save a ton of time. I figured it was a 90% savings on labor and probably a 20% savings on material alone. So I was like, guys, that's a huge win for us right there alone, right? So that was an easy, low-hanging win. It's like I always correlate it to, on the piping side, putting an elbow and a straight stick together, right? Like, it's simple, but it's somewhat efficient. So let's do it. And some of the other things we started doing was the wider roof blocking. So like on top of precast walls, they have those tin caps, and normally precast is 14 inches. Well, there's no 2x that will cover that efficiently. So, I sat there and I was like, hey, you know what we can do? We can cut all the plywood in the shop, rip it to width, have a consistent width or whatever you want. We're going to have it come out overlapped. So it's going to be whatever your width is plus 1/4 of an inch is what I figured. So now, instead of just a cold butt joint where you have 4 pieces of plywood sitting against each other, there was that running soldier overlap. So now they could just sit there and top con those boards together, and we had glued them and stapled them. So now they're not doing that up in a lift, 20 some feet tall. And, it really just took a lot of the MEP philosophies that, we've learned to love and embrace over the years, and took them straight over there. And, they were eating it up. They loved it. And so the other things we'd like to do was work with the trades that haven't gone down that adventure of prefab yet, which, you get kind of blinders on working at, Waldinger or, a North Mechanical or Helm, wherever, right? Like, they've taken that initiative, 15, 20 plus years ago to invest in prefab, and you forget that there are folks out there that haven't even started that journey. So, convincing them it's the right thing to do, it was a good chunk of the time that I was spending too. Is like, hey, this is an adventure, but it's well worth it. And, luckily was able to talk the language pretty easily, and, help convince some of these guys to take that chance and start going down prefab.
I'm curious. So coming from, from Waldinger in the MEP world, and then into the general contracting world, what was kind of the state of it, when you first came in, and like, I guess what, if any, I guess that would be the first, but like what kind of prefab mentality did they have when you came in on day one, and how receptive were they to, the ideas? I mean, hopefully they brought you in for the ideas, but I mean,
Yeah.
what did you kind of find? And I mean, were you able to, to find people that were influenceable and ways to make the change?
Yeah, absolutely. No, so when I stepped in day one, started talking to the different folks out in the field, all the superintendents, and you know, it was almost a little deja vu, from 10 years ago when I started at Waldinger. Went out and was talking to the foreman, and I quickly realized these guys are smart. They know what they're doing. Not that I ever doubted that, but it's nice to know what you're talking. Excuse me, that you're talking apples and apples to these guys out in the field. So, yeah, as we're talking to them and start kind of pitching these different ideas, they're like, "Oh yeah, no, that's great. That makes sense." And a lot of them started even kind of coming up with like, "Well, could we do this? Could we do that?" I'm like, "Oh, absolutely." One of the great ideas one of the field guys threw out was prefabbing the temp insulation opening panels. So instead of having someone out there on the field, slapping lath and poly on the side of the building, and I was like, "Hey, we've got this 10,000 square foot shop. Let's do it in there where we can be efficient and, ship it out on site and let you guys just slap it on the side of the building and away you go." So, it was kind of little things like that. And, we talked, and some of the carpenters that I worked with, brilliant minds, like they made me feel not they made me feel small. They were taking these complex door settings, which to me is like 10 years in the MEP. I kind of forget about doors and walls. It's like, what do they matter? As long as I'm not clashing with the king studs up above, I don't care. But they're taking these doors, and they're taking all this time, and they're looking at them, and they're saying, "Okay, yeah, this is where the handbar goes. This is where the kick plate is, and where the hinges are, and the door openers, the locks, anything electronic on it." Like they're looking at all that and putting it all together in the field. So each door I figured is roughly like 2.5 hours of field labor to put it all together and get it hung up. And I'm sitting there like, man, guys, that's crazy. And then, the thing that even boggled my mind further was like, I'm like, okay, so I dug into it. I'm like, how do you get these doors? And they're like, oh, they just show up on a pallet, and a box. Another pallet has all the boxes for all the hardware. And I said, like, good Lord, that's a whole lot of time sifting through that, right? And they're like, oh yeah, no, that's probably like a day and a half, depending on the job. And I'm like,
IKEA. Yeah.
oh yeah. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, why are we doing this? Why are you taking uh, reception of all this on your site where you don't even have the space to do any of this stuff? Like, guys, let's so we came up with an SOP to say, okay, hey, these doors are going to get shipped to our warehouse where we can have someone organize them, check to make sure the doors are in good quality on delivery. So that's taking one of their stalls in the field out, right? And then sorting putting and then getting them ready. And I said, you know what, let's take it a step further. Let's treat it like prefab. So we started going down the path of, hey, we're going to build this door jigging kit where they can have access to all sides of the door, put it all together, verify that it works, do a little QA QC process on it, put a label on it, stack it up with styrofoam spacers, wrap them, send them out on a door cart, 5-10 at a time. And now these carts are narrow enough you can wheel it in to any door or any room. And now these guys are going from 2.5 hours out in the field to 15 minutes a door, like that's huge. So those were some of just even just short 4 months. It was crazy how far we were really trying to go with it. And it was kind of fun to see all the opportunities there. And what ended it was the fact that the MEP subs weren't wanting to do multi-trade. No.
There it is.
No, and we're working through, one of the other things that I thought was kind of cool was flying in multi-trade racks for shafts, instead of just doing the horizontal ones that we all know and love. I was like, let's figure out how to really do one in the vertical. And So we came up with this 2x2 cage, and oh my goodness, this thing was, I would have traded my firstborn for this thing. Like it was just beautiful. Got it because of that farm boy mentality that I have. You start thinking about it and you're like, oh, hey, okay, so it's up against precast. So we're going to set this angle bracket with a trimble, set it to elevation, and then this cage will just sit right down on that angle bracket. So once that hits and everything's been installed in the cage in our shop, when it shows up and is dropped down that hole, once it hits those angles, you're done. Like all you have to do is connect on the right or off the risers into the floor, and then away you go, right? So we kind of had that, and we were toying with the idea of making it two pieces instead of one long piece. And so I came up with a little connection there that the lifting hooks on the top of the first one were slotted or tapered. And I had on the four corners, they'd each twist to a different side. So that way, when the second one was dropping down, those would act as the guides. So it just kind of shimmy right down into spot and set. And that's your connection to that first one. So now all you have to do is connect that second one up at the top, and away you go. So again, kind of, big pictures, we had 6 to 8 weeks planned for those shafts. And the way I sat back and looked at it, I was like, okay, if we do it with these cages, that's a day maybe of work and you're done with the shafts. Like there's nothing left to do in those things. So I was like, that's actually kind of cool. So that one's forthcoming. I'm sure I'll still get some pictures of the finished product, but yeah, that one, I'm excited to see that one just wrap up.
So I'm interested, Aaron, since you made the jump and you talked a little bit about like not really thinking about hanging doors and those kinds of things. What other things, did walking a mile in the GC shoe teach you that like I think can help everyone? What are some of the things, like the light bulb moments where you're like, wait a minute, because this is battle, right? But I don't think the battle's a battle as much as we think it is. So you've now walked the mile.
Yeah, absolutely. And luckily I got the governor's pardon on that green mile. So no, and yeah, you're spot on. Is I think so many people approach it as a battle. It's like, hey, no, we're not going to try this. No, don't want to do that. But honestly, and I don't know that it was necessarily me because I'm just one person, but being able to come in and almost be the conduit between the two and kind of help bring them together and say, hey, this is their concerns. Yeah, they're legit concerns, and just kind of help facilitate those conversations to say, you know what? Yeah, it sucks. And yeah, this may cost, so a lot of the times, sorry, sidebarring, a lot of the times the conversations from the GC side, encouraging those subs that aren't, at that high level of prefabrication, it always comes down to money, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, we get it. The money, it may cost you a little bit more up front, and it may turn out a wash on the true dollars, but it's the intangibles of the safety aspect. It's shifting the entire schedule to the left, which if done correctly, that contractor now has the opportunity to go bid another job, and now you're getting more money indirectly because you took that opportunity. So I think a lot of those changes that can happen is really just having the wherewithal to go out early and talk to the subs and their superintendents and talk with the GCs and say, hey, let's look at this project. Maybe we pick one thing that we do different, because we all know the definition of insanity. So it's like, why not? Let's try one different thing. If it works, awesome. We'll keep repeating it. We'll be better, and maybe it wasn't a total win, but it wasn't a total flop. Well, let's find out what we could possibly do to be better on it, and then go from there. But to sit there and just not even try, that's 100% of a loss all the time.
It totally is, and there's a couple things you hit there that are really cool because ultimately, actually, the first few fabrication jobs you do cost more, right? Because you're building a facility, you're understanding a process, you're implementing a deal. It's that over time you drive costs down. So at
Mhm.
some point you have to bite that off, and teaching that and understanding that as a GC, it's got to be kind of hard. What's cool is you carried kind of both. You have the street cred of coming from the trade side and doing it, so you can say that to them as well. What I'm interested in too here is like the schedule shift important. I mean, huge. Teaching how to be effective at fabrication. I mean, you can be really bad at fabrication. It costs you more if you have to do
Mhm.
rework in the field, etc. So, did you have an opportunity to kind of look uphill too at owners and at your clients to say, hey, like this time it's going to cost them that, but like we got to hang with them. It's a relationship business. We got to continue.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I sat in a few RFP interviews with clients and sat there and preached a lot of what, we know and we talk about, and they walked out of there and they came up and they're like, "Whoa, we had never thought about anything like that." And I kind of laughed to myself because I was thinking like, okay, well, there's all these subs that this is religion for them. So I was like, it really truly is that disconnect between the sides that kills the entire process. It's if we're able to get out in front of all the clients and all the GCs and say, hey, this is going to be better. I think they have no choice but to listen, right?
You would think so.
A lot of the times, one of the RFPs I sat in was, we're talking about a compressed schedule for a building. And I'm like, hey, we can hit that. We can probably beat it if we start even considering doing room potting or some more complex multi-trade prefab opportunities. We can absolutely take a lot of that time away. And the other thing that was actually kind of fun for me, and again, on the MEP side, we always used to go do different trade show walkthroughs at jobs and different companies, right? And we'd go and we'd walk their shop and pick up little nuggets. But actually being on the contractor side and walking through some of the electrical subs and the MEP subs, well, even like the drywall guys, right? Like it was fun to actually see some of their innovations. So like I was working with one of these metal stud framer contractors here in the Nebraska area. And as far as I can tell, and I could be very wrong, but between Chicago and Denver, I have yet to find anyone that's doing this where they roll their own studs and their own track, which, okay, I get that. Not a big deal, right? But what they're doing, and I've seen this on the West Coast a little bit, is that as they roll it, they have another machine that dimples the track and the stud, but then it also puts a hole in. So now you don't even need people with tape measures out on the job site. They just match these, mating dimples up, put a screw in where the hole is, and walk away. I'm like, man, how cool is that? Like that's quality control right there. So like to me, just seeing some of that too, I'm like, oh, that just, it opened up a whole world of like dangerous thinking on my end. The mad scientist all of a sudden started brewing again. So it's kind of like, oh wow, what else could be done?
I want to pick at that mad scientist too, because you got to do something kind of cool. I don't think, too many people have done. Like we've all kind of come, not we've all, but a lot of people, a lot of our listeners have, refit a fab shop or started a new one from an existing. Like you came into, not where there was but nothing there, and you got to build out a whole fab shop, all the processes. What what did you learn through that? What was some of the highlights, and what were some of the struggles?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the highlight, like you said, was the opportunity to kind of um, put your trademark on it, right? Like, I've had this opportunity that I saw to say, okay, hey, this is going to be not just a fab shop. This is going to be the fab shop. This is going to be something that this area hasn't seen, and we're just going to rock with it. And so, yeah, you know, it takes a unique blend of the owner of the company and the people behind it, doing the work to really, come together and say, okay, yeah, we're behind this. We're going to go with that. And, you know, sit back and say, okay, hey, this is how we're going to set up the shop. And, beings that as the general contractor, the biggest struggle that I saw was, okay, one day we could be doing this project. It's a typical um, soft medical facility, right? Like a clinic, right? And the next time we can be doing this complex multi-story high rise. And so it's like you have to be nimble. Like nothing can be bolted to the floor really in your not only in physical reality but also mentally, right? Like just because you get in this process doesn't mean that it shouldn't be reviewed and shouldn't have different versions of it, because it's going to change, and you'll pick a little thing from the clinic that you can use and apply to the high rise, right? So there's always different avenues of learning if you're willing and open to it.
Sure.
You hit on something earlier when you talked a little bit about uh, meeting with people and just trying to find like that one thing to kind of make any project a little bit better. Like what's one thing we can improve? And I talk about this a lot, but I love that mentality because nothing we do is a zero sum game. And I think even on the general contractor level, or when you look at like these macro level jobs, everybody's eyes immediately, or the conversations immediately go to like bathroom pods or these like big giant uh you know mammoth ideas, these like whale hunter ideas
Right.
that they're going after, and then 99% of the time none of it happens because something fell short or there was no so I love the idea of this, like looking at these little things where you talk about just, can we unbox something that we typically didn't unbox, or
Yep.
can we kit something that we typically didn't kit? It's a really great way because everybody can kind of agree on those little micro things that make the job better. But, you know, is there anything, and I think in the mechanical world, we've gone down that road a lot, especially I know on the plumbing side, we did a lot with
Hmm.
restroom, fixtures and things like that. But was there anything, looking at those small little improvements at the GC level outside of what we would typically look at in the MEP world, uh, that you thought was really cool and that you might bring back?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest takeaway that I really sat back and absorbed from the time is, and not that I didn't ever know it, but how crucial the VDC process really is for automating a lot of these processes. It's sitting back and looking at it and saying like, hey, yeah, we can do this. And okay, great, you clash detected this project, but how do you squeeze more lemon juice out of that lemon, right? Like you can't just say, hey, look, I went to the store and bought a lemon. Like you got to actually squeeze it to get some lemonade out of it too. So to me, it's like, okay, hey, we really need to invest in that, or continue to invest in the VDC processes. And because that opens up, like through your product trend, it opens up a lot of avenues that are digitally painful otherwise. It's like I sat there and I shouldn't tell you because you'll probably get angry that I loaded all this stuff up on the back end, but I was trying to help figure out if we could leverage the tool for doors and almost kind of creating like a little door kitting hardware pseudo software program from inside of Stratus, right? Like is like, okay, we could have all of this stuff kind of running on checkboxes based on the doors and having a bill of material producing a lot of that stuff. So I was quietly trying to work through some of that, and I think I got pretty close. But it just, to me, that's, I guess maybe that's just where my brain has been at for so long, that I just see no other way but to get more out of these models. And I still think we're really only scratching the surface of what we can possibly do with them.
I think we're leaving a ton on the table with the models, to be honest. Like, there's so much to go through in that process, but we only have a certain amount of time on the show, so we're gonna bring it back. So you walked a mile in another shoe,
Yep.
and I did that myself. I'll be honest. Best advice I ever got, by the way, as an IT guy who did IT and CIO and all that. And a VP of software development said, "You want to understand how to be the best IT person you could be? Come over and learn how software is built." And it has given me my appreciation. It's given me where I am today. So you did that. You went over to the GC. But I think, what might you be bringing that back? What might be next in Aaron's journey?
So I think, like I said, I've got the next 2 weeks off, but the goal right now is to come back to Waldinger, and we've kind of got that all squared away. So I'll be starting back there, and I'm bringing a lot of perspective back with me, which I think is going to really help innovate internally again. So I'm excited to be back working with them and really start pushing more on the different opportunities that we're going to see.
Well, and we see respect for perspective is a huge thing, Aaron. So now you kind of have that GC understanding. What do you think you can bring back? What do you think you can look? Everybody who does what you do and others in our industry does can't just, like, we can't all flip and say, "Hey, let me spend time over there and then come back." So what wisdom can you give people about this experience that you're like really excited to go back to Waldinger? Like, I think you left where you were in a great place and you're going to where you are in a great place. It's like, us, it's what those of us that do that go through great change do. What can you teach them?
You know, I if you have the opportunity, it never, if done properly, it never hurts to get out of your comfort zone and learn something, right? So it's one of those things where, bringing that perspective comment earlier back around is, I think one of the biggest things that we as a subcontractor probably could improve on, which would only help our causes, is being a more upfront during the bidding processes on what some of our plans of attack are. It's like, yeah, we're going to prefab this, we're going to prefab that, and I think some do that. But I think being more honest and transparent is only going to improve your potentials out in the field, but then on future jobs too. Because if you come back and you say, "Hey, we want to try this with you guys," and the GC is like, "Oh, we didn't even know that's possible," but you end up knocking it out of the park, and you walk back and they take that away and they're like, "Dude, those guys were amazing to work with. We need them on every project." Like that was simple, and that all just sparks from one conversation up front. So it's like, yeah, we just need to do a better job of talking, I think, is a group.
That's well said. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
And I know we're kind of wrapping, but in lieu of what you said, congratulations. Great to hear where that's going. Waldinger.
Is it a good thing or a bad thing, Trent? And I'll be bugging you more and more again.
It's a great thing. And I've known, I've known Waldinger. I've known most of the people at Waldinger for a long time. Great organization, great company. I know this is, and I think these companies are smart. Like this is when you have great people in your organization that go out and get to learn outside of your organization for a little bit and then come back and bring that knowledge back. I mean, I'm telling you, it's not a bad thing. What is it? It's the boomerang, right? It's the new
yes.
Yeah. So it's a free, I don't know. It's a pretty reasonable education for the company a lot of times too. So it's great.
We'd better see a really cool proposal for a session next year at MEP based on all of this.
Oh, yes. That would actually be good.
Maybe an IoT or what do we call it
IoT.
now? An IoT.
The IoT.
But in all honesty, Aaron, like the ability to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, the ability to have respect for perspective is huge, especially for tinkerers. I mean, I think somebody who tinkers at the level that you do, and by the way, for those of you, I can't share my random texts I get, but every once in a while I get an incredible text from Aaron that really has nothing to do with anything other than holy cow, I could do really cool things with really great technology.
Yeah.
So that respect for perspective, that ability to see both sides has got to be huge for you. And as a tinkerer, like it gives you an opportunity. And I'm excited to see you come back to Waldinger. I mean, everybody needs space to do these things and bring it back and help us all improve. So I'm wondering to those listening, like what final advice can you give them before you don't physically do it? Cause we just had somebody do it. Drop a microphone. It hurts in my ears, so don't do it. But what kind of mic drop can you give us? Because we're hitting that point.
Right. Well, I don't know that every company is going to be open to the idea of a sabbatical like that. But, it, like you said, that walking that mile in your shoes, in someone else's shoes, that empathy is priceless. And honestly, in retrospect, I absolutely could have done this without, taking that leap of faith. But I don't know that I would have necessarily gained the entire perspective of it either, right? Like, you can always pick up little things by watching, but it's, as we know, it's like when you're in the heat of the battle, you learn way more than you'd ever would have picked up on a textbook or watching a YouTube video. Like, when you're doing it and you have no chance other than to not fail right there and then, like that's
you could have shadowed a foreman for a week or two, right, and probably pick things up, but there's always going to be the safety net of your your role. You took the leap and really dove in.
Yep. And, it makes you realize how many of the things that we do on a daily basis that maybe aren't documented. And I'm not advocating for everyone to go out and drop, $250,000 on documenting all their processes. But, there is a value because not everyone walks in at our level, right? Like we have to also be able to leave the breadcrumbs for the next person in. We're just going to have to do it as an industry because none of us are getting younger, right? Well, except for Trent. I swear every time I see him, he just looks about 5 years younger.
I'll take it.
Yeah. But yeah, so like to me, it's like getting those documentations and getting some of that knowledge shared is kind of I is going to be my um, my approach is as I restart down the Waldinger path is, making sure that people understand, some of the reasons of the things I'm doing what I'm doing. It's not just because I'm nuts, it's because there's actually a reason behind it.
Maybe a little column A, a little column B.
Yeah, like, so you're
Yeah.
definitely nuts. It's
Yeah.
not just because I'm nuts.
Yeah. 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 And it's weird where you get the inspiration from, right? Like you can pull it from so many different aspects of your life that aren't even related to what you're doing on a daily basis. But you can sit back and say, oh wow, look at that, and that's where I think a lot of that is gained. Watching some of the steel guys, you know, erect the steel, and concrete guys doing some of their pour work, and I'm looking at them like, man, that looks like there could be an easier way to do that. And you start talking to them, and you find out like they're like, oh yeah, that sucks. Like we need something that protects the anchor bolts because that crane runs over them and they bend, and now we're drilling them, and it's just a huge pain. And like, oh well, yeah, we can build something like that. So
Well,
it's sometimes those questions that no one else has asked. You gotta kind of be looking out for them, which is really weird to think like that. But
well, I'm gonna pull us in because you hit on this, Aaron. The complexity of what we do as an industry has to do with everybody, and a respect for perspective across them, and a respect for expertise across them is so critical. Like you said it, the steel guys, they have a completely different idea of the way things work. Our, the concrete and the way they pour and the way it has to cure and the way it has to be reinforced with rebar. And then understanding that cranes have to operate to bring materials to places. This is a complex industry. Nobody's going to actually solve it on their own. It's going to take tinkerers, thought-provoking people, and people who poke at the norm to change it. And that's why we have people like you on the Dork. So listen, man, I want to keep going for like another hour or 2 or 3. And next year you're going to
I
be
know
at
we didn't even get to
MEP.
talk about all my underground nuclear bunker stuff that I've been exploring here in the last couple months.
Hey, listen, that was on you and Jonathan when the recording failed, because sometimes, recordings fail because, that's between you two. And nobody's really sure if it was you talking to Fight Club, your eternal other self, or not. So, and we're going to leave that there. Listen, man, tell people where to find you because, man, you're one of my favorite people. You're awesome, and I'm excited to see you back in the MEP world, bro.
Yep. Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn, obviously. I believe that I have something on all the other platforms. Yeah, I would say find me on LinkedIn and I'll redirect you from there. That's going to be the safest route. Like you don't, I've toyed with the idea of doing an OnlyFans that watches construction dorks like us. I do think there would be an audience out there, but
you let us know.
There's someone for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll have
That's
to
right.
pay them. I will tell you that now.
Yeah. Or maybe we start up our own only exhaust fans.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm just throwing it out there, we just,
I don't know if we'll even allow this to be put into post, but with that,
that may not make it.
Aaron, it's been so awesome to sit down with you. Trent, Travis, it's been great. I can't wait to see you guys in just a few days. This has been episode 93. Well, he went to the GC, but it's return of the MEP. Bam!
It was
Damn.
supposed to be Return of the Mech. Return of the Mech. That was
Ah.
Damn.
I'm
I love it.
enough, man.
You
are
enough.
enough. By the way, this is a stupid